Let's go back to the San Francisco Board of Supervisors, because now they have supervisor meetings now that the public can go to. And
Yeah,
some
the school board meetings with the supervisors.
school board meetings, yeah. So some folks in the Black community are demanding that this woman step down, and they're saying that this is going to show up in the streets, basically, essentially threatening violence.
Okay, but here's what we're not considering. She was appointed to the position by a Black woman. She was not elected to the position. She was appointed to the position because she filled one of the school board positions due to the recall of the 3 people who were taken out of those positions originally.
Right.
So 3 people were recalled from the board, and I believe it was London Breed who appointed this Asian woman to the board as one of the replacements for the recall.
Mm-hmm.
Interestingly, there was more of a push to do the recall than there is to get this woman out.
Because there was a pattern of behavior with the recall. We had that conversation about the recall.
My understanding of that recall, that it was primarily based on the fact that the 3 people who were taken out of the position wanted to do a school audit as well as rename schools that were named after racist people. And on the heels of COVID, many people from the community thought prioritizing renaming the schools was not the right decision. That was sort of like the icing on the cake.
Yes,
rather than opening schools.
We're not named after racist people. We don't name schools after racist people in San Francisco. These schools were named after Abraham Lincoln and shit like that. They wanted to.
People are arguing that Lincoln was a racist.
I get it, but like that really rename. There's so many more things that need to be done than getting.
And I think that's, to your point, that's what the community was saying, that like the money and resources and time we're going to take in renaming schools, why don't we take that and first of all get them reopened because they were closed because of COVID and all the resources, and so I think that was a big part of the argument, resulting in one of many other issues of these 3 school board members being recalled. And then one of them positions is replaced by this Asian woman, I believe her name is Ann Chu. And she basically says that she doesn't think education is as much of a priority to Black and brown communities as they are to other communities. And she was called a racist for those comments.
I mean, that's her opinion. This is probably the first like political appointment she's ever had. She was dumb to say it if she didn't think there was going to be blowback from it. You know, you probably should have just kept your mouth shut and just did the work, because that's what she was put in here to do, is to do the work rather than doing a bunch of grandstanding, which is what the previous people were doing, which is why the parents wanted to get rid of them. She gets in and she shoots her mouth off when she should have just did the work. So, mistake on her part. Do I think she needs to lose her job for it? No, not yet. Again, back to pattern of behavior. And
pattern of behavior.
And as you said, to an extent,
I don't know. Does she have a pattern of behavior being racist, or did she say something racist? And is it racist if it's true?
If it's true, it's not racist, but people don't want to admit it.
And therein lies the debate.
Yeah.
Do Black and brown communities care as much about education as other communities do? And I don't mean anecdotally. Yes, we're going to find thousands of Black families, Latino families, Asian families, Ukrainian families, immigrant families that appreciate education.
Absolutely.
Anecdotally, we'll find one in any bunch. As a whole, culturally, do cultures value education the same? What do you think, Jay?
I think they do, but I think it's more of a socioeconomic thing. I think if you're very, very, very poor, and also if you're very poor and you had kids before you were ready, you know what I mean? If you're one of these people who had a kid when they were 20 years old, and you've got, now you've got 3, 4 kids by 3 or 4 different guys, you're thinking you're in survival mode. You're not necessarily valuing education as much as, say, someone else who went and got a degree, saw the benefits of education in their own career, and they have a career rather than working at McDonald's with their 3 baby daddies and shit, right? So you've seen education prove to be valuable in your life. And so, yes, you will value education with your kids. Whereas those other folks, if they're in a different type of situation where they did not see the value of education because they didn't go get any further education beyond high school, I can see where they're coming from. And also they can value education, but then also, to the experiences that you've had, still show up and just argue with the teacher all the time and just yell at them and all that. You know what I mean?
Right.
You've had instances where parents argue with you because you fail their kid when their kid didn't do a single homework assignment the entire school year. And the parent, if they valued education, instead of showing up to argue with you at the end of the year when their kid gets an F, if they valued education, they would have made sure their kid was getting their fucking homework done.
Right. Like, I'm always distressed and unnerved by conversations with parents who are like, I didn't know my kid didn't do homework for a month. For a month? I mean, there's a homework sheet that you're supposed to be signing every day. The kid writes down the homework assignment. I mean, you've heard of school, right? Like, I mean, even if you are not a student yourself, you've heard of kids having homework. At no point did you scratch your head and say, hey, I never see this kid come home from school and open up his school books and sit down and like do work. And I think it's important for kids to have homework. I think it's important for them to understand that the learning continues outside of the classroom, not just in the classroom. The learning is supposed to continue at home. It should be part of your conversations. It should be part of like your daily living, like what you're doing. So being a child of immigrant parents, education was something that was very important to them. It was more important than me going to the prom or me going out or shopping, or, you know, instead of me getting all new school clothes, they would get hand-me-downs from other people and save their money for me to be able to travel or have the books that I need for school or whatever it was. Like, we just made different decisions. I never had Jordans. I never had the name brand clothes, but I was also never missing anything I needed for school. You know, I wasn't a kid that showed up to school and didn't have pencils, but I've got on $80 sneakers and an iPhone. And there has to be conversations around these things so that we can fix it.
Can we talk about that? Can't get your kid a calculator. Can't get your kid the shit that they need for school. Can't afford to send them to a science camp or something like that during the summer. But
they all have a phone.
5 different pairs of $200 sneakers.
And they're in 4th, 5th grade.
Gucci, just so you can post pictures of you and your kid in your matching outfits.
I mean, I'm just saying,
scraped in designer, like, getting D's and C's.
I'm just saying there are decisions that can be made that can help circumvent some of the bullshit that we can't circumvent. And a part of that is learning at home. So when I went to school and both my parents worked, it's not like I had a stay-at-home mom. Both of my parents worked full time. My dad worked 6 days a week. He was a truck driver. I got the work at school, and my parents expected me to come home and then learn the material that I got from school. They had no expectations of the teacher reading with me one-on-one. They had no expectations of the teacher sending home the homework. They had no expectations of the teacher doing anything other than teaching me. Here is what you need to learn this week, X, Y, and Z. My parents expected me to take that information home now and do my homework and practice it with them as a family. So yes, I'm supposed to learn how to read letters A through J. I now come home and concentrate on making flashcards, practicing my letters A through J. I don't sit and do nothing until I go back to school the next day. Instead of the kid having the iPad at dinner, make some flashcards. Or let the kid use the phone for the flashcards, right? Like, but I mean, it doesn't have to be cartoons and bullshit and TikTok all day.
Yeah.
There's a way. There's a public library. Every public library has computers. Right? If we can get our nails done, we can get the kid to the library.
Half the time, the library is like right next to the school. You know, the schools have libraries too, after school programs. So, like, yeah, not saying they don't value education. They all want their kids to go to college or some shit, but like there's different levels to this shit.
Yeah, the investment it takes, I think, is practiced differently culturally.
I think it really comes down to the socioeconomics of it. I think if you're a part of an upper middle class Black family, your parents are going to be on your ass about education. Whereas if you're part of a working class Black family, your parents might be on your ass about education, but they also might not. And that split comes down to, did your mom have you with, 4 or 5 other kids with 4 or 5 other niggas when your mom was between the ages of 18 and 25? Or did your mom have you with one person, and whether or not y'all are, doesn't even matter if y'all are married, if they're married or not, just, does your mom have a whole bunch of other baby daddies and shit? What kind of job does she
and vice versa. Let's not just put it on the moms. Where are these guys who are laying all this pipe and having these kids and not showing up? It's not just on the moms.
Oh, of course. It's definitely on these niggas as well.
Of all races. Show up. It shouldn't just be the mothers trying to schlep over to the school after work.
I have a question about that.
You can show up to sports, if you can show up to Halloween. When I tell you, I never see more parents at a school than I do at a Halloween.
They show up for the party.
And I mean by the hundreds. Why is that not happening for parent teacher night?
Mm.
And the Halloween stuff is in the middle of the day, in the middle of the work day.
Oh, it's not after school? It's not like that night?
No, bro. It's in the middle of the school day. And the reason I know this is because one day I was teaching a class and the kids had not finished their work. So I told them they weren't going to the Halloween parade. And the principal actually came into my classroom and said, "We are waiting for the kids." And I said, "Well, they're not coming. They didn't finish their work." And she looked at me like I had 10 heads and was like, "Ms. Dean, these kids need to put their pencils down and come outside." And I was like, "What are you talking about?" And when I opened the door and looked outside and I saw 1,000 people standing outside, my jaw dropped. I didn't expect that.
What?
And let me tell you something. I had to bring those kids outside.
Wow.
Why isn't there 1,000 people parent teachers night? Where are these people parent teachers night? That's my question. It's one day. One. You made it for Halloween. All I'm asking is make it one day to parent teachers night.
And it's Halloween during the day, and this is parent teachers
night. Bro, this is in the middle of the day. I almost fell over. When the principal was like, "Real talk, these kids need to come outside." I was like, "Seriously?" She was like, "Yeah, their families are here." And I went outside and was like, "The whole community is here." The whole community was there.
Like, what lesson does that teach the kids? You get to go have this party out before you get your work done. That's not.
And your parents aren't going to do this for parent teachers night. They're not showing up like this at school board meetings.
Mm-hmm.
But now you want to show up if someone's racist. How about show up in advance and vote in advance so these people don't even end up on the school board in the first place? Again, we're reactionary. When do we become strategic in our thinking as a community?
Okay, that's a very good point. My question is, with regards to this specific school board person, do you want an effective educator on the school board, or do you want someone who's a perfect progressive who's never going to say anything offensive? I would think
it depends on who is better for the children.
Okay, let's say
you're an asshole but effective. I am more supportive of you than someone who's really nice and well-intentioned and can't accomplish anything.
Thank you. Give me the school board person who says some shit that's not PC. If they are better for these kids than the previous person, or someone who's going to be a perfect liberal, perfect progressive, who never says anything that offends anyone, always uses the right pronouns, always, you know what I mean?
I don't need to like you. And I think as Americans, we're too obsessed with liking the person. We like. I don't need to like you. If you're smart and effective, I want what's best for our children. I don't know what anybody else wants.
Mm-hmm.
And if that means I don't like you, I'm willing to sacrifice that.
Yeah.
For the sake of what's best for the children.
Yeah. Well, that's the thing.
Some of the smartest people I know are people I don't like.
Yeah. Do you want a technocrat or do you want a populist?
Right. Do you want somebody who's effective or do you want someone who speaks really well? It's one of the things Clinton, when he was president, was most described as, people would say that they would have meetings with him and they wouldn't get a single thing that they wanted. But the conversation went so well, they didn't realize it until they got to the parking lot.
Yeah, I've heard that story about him. He's so incredibly charming.
Yes. That by the time he gets to the parking lot, you realize he didn't agree to do anything you asked him for. But you had the best time. I mean, okay, I'm glad you had a great time. But these kids still can't read. And this school still doesn't have computers. So I don't need to like you. I need you to be effective. I need you to be smart. I need you to be what's best. This isn't a congeniality contest.
Right.
And this, I think, impacts a child's trajectory just as important as breathing.
Yeah.
Is their access to education. Not education, their access to it. If the best school in the world is a school they can't get to, then it doesn't matter. If the resources are there, but there's no way for them to get to those resources, then it doesn't matter.
Yeah. What is it like for them on a day-to-day basis right now? They ain't got no school supplies. Their teacher has to come out of pocket. You know, there's no free lunch program, or the free lunch program doesn't,
and why have we
have an adequate budget.
Why have we accepted this as a society, but we accept unlimited funding for war? Unlimited raises for school board members. Everybody's getting a raise. Taxes are always going up. So then why are we cutting programs that affect children in a society that claims to care about them so much?
Nobody's taxed more than people who live in San Francisco, believe me.
Right. And to what avail? And I think that's what makes people think, you know what, giving the government my money is not working, so I might as well not. And support the party that says this government doesn't know what to do with our money, so let's keep it for ourselves and make the best decisions we can for our families. There is an argument for that. And this is the argument. This is what gives that argument validity, whether you agree with it or not. Something to think about on this episode of Raw Food.